talk show. It was like a week before my debut was supposed to happen. I was like, you know what? It'll give me a chance to practice, and I want to really kill my like brunch. So because it's like 2 or 3 numbers versus this one number I have to do. I was like, you know what? It'll get rid of the nerves, whatever. Mind you, like my anxiety was a 10 the whole time. My legs were shaking, whatever. But as soon as the music started, it was like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, and people were like screaming and like in a good way. And I remember it was like, um, Teo was like, what the F? Like, that this is so different. I love you. Keep doing this. Like, this is what we need in Halifax or what we need in Djibouti. And that kind of just like, fed into my delusion of, okay, all right, I'm going to do this then. Gwe ning dalusi dana Sylliboy, ach ni na nujin bedediged, ach ning dalu Sisonic First Nation in Unamagi, Cape Breton. Hi, my name is Tanas Sylliboy. I am a Mi'kmaq nurse practitioner. I am from Eskasoni First Nation, located in Cape Breton, here in Nova Scotia. I'm also a two-spirit drag artist known as Anita Lambeck. Um, I would say I never really had a particular coming out story, like which there's a reason for that. Because growing up, I really never wanted to contribute to this like colonial experience of coming out. And I thought as a person, I'm Tanas, and I don't need to explain a definition to any other person other than myself. As long as I understand myself, that's the only thing that matters to me. At some point in time, through discussions with like other queer and two-spirit people, um, like even just like as I got older, like the term like gay or queer being labeled onto me just really never stuck well, just or not stuck well, just kind of just didn't never make sense to me, or the things that I would kind of draw from didn't really blend well with Dana. So I'm like, okay, like if I'm not this, then what am I? And at some point, like as I mentioned, through discussions with other like two-spirit people and just like going on my own journey of discovering myself, that's kind of when I knew, I've always just been Danas, and like my sexuality and my gender can only be other than explained as like myself or like two-spirit. Like there's that, obviously there's like a feminine side of you and a masculine side of a person, but to me, the way I express myself or the way I see myself is just Danas. And when I talk to people or explain to other people like I'm two-spirit, like who I am and how I'm shaped or how I was molded to be or grown to be, has been always shaped by my language, has always been shaped by my culture, where I come from, the people I surround myself by, and the people that raised me too. And not only that, like the spirit within me also, kind of just, eventually coming into adulthood, eventually you're like, okay, like this is the only way I can really kind of explain to another person this is who I am. I can't give you a definition and have you understand who I am, but I can kind of describe, well, as a Mi'kmaq or as an Omno, who I am is like two spirit, or who I am is founded in love, founded in respect, and and founded in kindness is the other thing. So going back to like coming out, um, it's just something that never really spoke to me because I always felt that coming out could either be a liberating experience for some people or it could be a very oppressive experience for some people. And, it either makes or breaks a person. And I always like framed it in a way of rather than coming out, you allow others into your worldview. So why is it that I should leave my safe space, my worldview, and go outside to explain to you who I am, rather than allowing you into my safe space, my worldview, to really share who I am with you. So I always kind of try to frame it in that aspect, like rather than coming out to a person, you're allowing that person into your life because you've been that person your whole life. You didn't just wake up one day and step out a door and say, "This is who I am." Like you have been in that safe space your whole life, and you're just kind of, as you grow, that space gets bigger, and who is involved in that space? You're the one who's deciding who's involved in that space. So growing up, I always said, like, the people that are in my worldview, in my circle, my Nigma family, is the people that are going to see me and I see them, kind of thing. So like, big answer, but like that's how I would kind of explain things to others. That yes, you can say this is an experience of coming out, but like for me, it's I allow people into my worldview to understand me, so I can understand them too. So certainly, colonialism and the role of like Catholicism has really kind of washed away a lot of what we knew what two spirit is, and or even just when it comes to like our third gender, like doesn't necessarily just mean like two spirit. Like you look at like other indigenous communities across like Turtle Island, like there are different words and meanings to explain this third gender, and typically this role like either would be like a more spiritual role in the community or a healing role in the community. Like growing up, like when I first heard the term of two spirited, uh, and I always like say it in a sense that like it was like hearing a story from a friend, and they're like, "Oh no, they're two spirited," and I heard the like TOO, like two spirited. I'm like, so they have too much spirited, like. And they're like, no, like they have like a masculine or male and female or woman, man, a spirit in one. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that makes much more sense than having too much spirit. Like, and anyways, it was just one of those things in your upbringing. You're just like, that makes no sense to me. But like, obviously, having conversations and then even hearing from two spirit people, like growing up, like I didn't have that opportunity to hear our experiences and stories, or even like our roles in our communities, to the extent that I do now. Like, had I known all these things when I was younger, had things been easier, or would have things been make more sense earlier on in life. Um, but like now, I guess now, like there's a big view of like respect to two spirit people, just because like they are known to be like either like healers in their communities, or even people who are very like knowledgeable and wise that can kind of like mediate and solve like an issue, or like a concern that comes up within the community. So a lot of these people either go into like leadership roles, or or lead organizations that kind of like advocate for other two spirit and queer, or gender nonconforming people. Like for me, like I'm in healthcare. Like I feel like healing is in my blood. Like I feel like this is something that I was like born to do, and really have a great passion in, because like, and then eventually like learning more about myself as a two spirit person, I'm like, okay, like no, like this was actually in my blood, or this is something I was meant to do. And yeah, so it's just one of those things that like we're often sought to for our unique perspectives, because not only like right now in like the 21st century, we're navigating through life using like two-eyed seeing, but also we also have a different lens too, and that lens is navigating the world as a two-spirit person. Um, so I think, we're pretty sought after in terms of like trying to get like a better understanding, or get solutions to certain key issues within our communities. But I do feel that it's something that, in the last like 15 to 20 years, we have made a lot of progress or unlearning, I should say, in our communities, because like 20 years ago, it's like something you hear a lot of like either like homophobia or transphobia within our communities, that, the things that never existed 100, 200 years ago, or things that never existed pre-contact. Like, there's no homophobia, there's no transphobia at that point. You saw everyone as people. Like, an example, like in our language, we don't have he, him, she, her. We have they, only they. Like, we have negum, we have neen. Neen is myself or me. Negum is they or them, explaining. And everyone's the same. And whether or not people differ from roles wise in our communities, like hunter gatherer and person who takes care of children, and then there's that two-spirit role that helps everyone and like is there for everyone, because they're there to ensure that we flourish as a society, or we flourish as a community. And I always thought, that's something I want us to flourish wherever we are in life, whether or not I'm in Jabuktuk and trying to kind of find place, or find myself seen, not just, I don't want Anita Land vaccine on pictures on the wall. I want just, I see myself, them walking on stage. That's me. That's they're telling my story. They're telling our language, or they're sharing our songs. Like, it would have been nice to see that, like, growing up. Like, now you see the likes of like Jeremy Dutcher, Two-Spirit Sylliboy artists, just really sharing his story and our songs throughout history with the rest of the world, and it just brings so much people together. And I'm like, I want to do that too, but like, I'm not the best vocalist, but I'll do what I can with the many talents that I could tap into. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I take great pride that I am a two-spirit person, and I really do want to make a difference here. Yeah, so in 20, like, as a lot of things were born in the pandemic, Anita was also born in the pandemic. So last year, in 2022, like Halifax Pride had, or like Djibouti Pride festivals, and the Two Spirit, the Wabanaki Two Spirit Association put together like Two Spirit events, like several of them over Halifax. Like, they had Two Spirit Sharing Circle, Two Spirit Crafts, and I was like, you know what, like, this is great. Like, this is a place that we want to feel seen, and we're going to feel seen by our own people. But we should feel like that at all the events. We should feel like that at the flag raising ceremony. We should feel like that at the bump, the grinds, the QT BIPOC show, the all the shows, all the spaces, and then kind of like, I'm like, no, we shouldn't just feel like at those spaces. We should feel like that everywhere. We should feel like that in hospitals. We should feel like that in clinics, in libraries, in schools. We should feel seen. We should feel safe to a point that we're able to express ourselves or share our stories, because you can't just put us in a room and say, like, share your story. It's one of those things that I have to feel safe. I have to feel trust. I have to know that if I share this story, this story is going to be held with respect and shared with respect to the rest of the world, and they're just gonna that people would benefit from it, and I know that. And so forth, when it comes to these spaces, I'm like, okay, what's missing? Us. We're missing from that picture. We're missing from that stage. We're missing from those songs. We're missing from those murals. So that idea popped in my head, and I just kind of like sat with it, and I'm like, you know what, that would be interesting. I just don't think I could do it, but I want to think of some names anyway. So I sat down with my friends in Eskasani, and I was just like, let's come up with some names. I want something very like unapologetically indigenous. I want it in your face. I want like this aha moment after you say it. And and maybe you're like, if you don't know what it means, you're gonna be like, Google it, and you're like, oh my god, like, eyes open, like, I'm learning. And so after a few different names came, like, we were just thinking of like, my my friend Ken was like, I need a bingo collar. And I'm like, oh, that would slay. I'm like, I need to go bigger. Like, I need a bingo collar. It would be amazing. But, or it was like, um, Regina, the band manager or something. It was like very like evolving that way. And eventually I was like, I want land back in it. And then my friend Canada was like, oh my God, like we were saying, I need a bingo collar, but what up? I need a land back. And I was like, and I said it like yelled it into the fire. And I'm like, this is it. I think this is it. Oh my God. And we're just like, okay, what are we gonna do with that then? Like, I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Like, and then I went on Instagram and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put out on my IG and just say, I'm interested in doing this. Who would want me? And then one of my friends, our Matrix, reached out to me. She's like, if you're serious about this, I would love to have you. And I'm like, what the hell did I just do? Like, why did I do this? Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And so I spent like prior to like so that was like a little bit like in August, and then I put this out end of August. I was like, okay, I have a month till like Halloween. I want to debut Halloween. I like being spooky. I love horror elements and like let's think of it. And so like I made a couple mixes of like my favorite horror movies and like made a couple of costumes with my sibling. Actually, like a year before, because she was trying to do, like COVID kind of canceled her plans for drag, but mind you, just trying to do it again. But like we put costumes together like during the peak of the pandemic, everything was shut down. So it's like I'm gonna take these and make some use of them. And then came this big Halloween show. And then actually prior to this big Halloween debut, it was like El Noir and Maya Fox were doing a QT BIPOC Halloween show. So they reached out to me like, we'd love to have you as a spotlight performance. I was like, that's too soon. I thought I had like 2 weeks to prepare. Like, you know what? Let's do it. Like, sure. And then going to that event, just hearing like myself and ourselves as like people of color and like indigenous people. Like there's another indigenous queen there from Eskasoni. I was like, wow, like this is like I feel so comfortable. I don't feel nervous around these people. I feel I'm with my own. Like I feel like I'm seen. I don't feel like I'm in this corner doing my own thing. I'm like very here and they want to help me, see me, whatever. And stepped out on stage, the music went on, and 10 months, no, almost 11 months later, still doing it. And just really that same element that why I started it was, I want to share us. I want to share whether or not it's our humor. I want to share our history, our culture, language, like whether or not it's the mixes I do that of things that I grew up around, whether or not it's like smoke signals, laughing at things like Pocahontas, or even like implementing things that like our artists from our communities, like I would wear like beaded jewelry, or even now like I've been heavy into sewing and trying to like represent myself and my culture and what I do. And and I would say probably last through 4 or 5 months. Like, mind you, I've been like proud of everything I've done so far, but like this last show, then last month, I did a show dedicated to MMIW, and um, and it was just like one of those things. I didn't actually mean to get like emotional for it, but like it was just like one of those things that like as I was putting it together, like I put all my good intentions into it, and I was like, this is a story I want to share of us. Like, these are people that didn't have the opportunity to share their story. And, I want to share that. I want people to see that and know, we're still here and we'll always still be here. And yeah, so I and I did the performance, and I remember like everyone stood up, and and like the only like out of all the like 14 performances, like they stood up, like everyone did a standing ovation, and I thought, you know what, this is why I want to do what I'm doing now, because I want people to know we're here. I want people to know our story. I want people to be aware of who we are. and what we're experiencing. And like as like two-spirit people, like, or even like for two Indigenous women, like, like we're more at risk for harm, whether or not it's domestic violence or abuse. And I want people to know, what's continuing to happen to us, and what we as a society can do to help, uplift us or even raise our voices. Like, we don't need people to like stand in front of us and be our, like, body, whatever you call it, body vest or whatever. We want people to know that we're going to be listened to and we're going to be like valued. So yeah, like it's just, and then after that, like it was just kind of like, wow, it's just been this incredible journey that, and then a few weeks later, I did this like boat show, and I'm like doing something from the White Lotus or Titanic, like, but yes, there's meaning to that. Like, to me, these are things that bring me joy or bring me humor, and that, that's something I want to spread. Doesn't necessarily just have to be, oh, that's Anita, she's gonna teach us something. Like, no, like I want to make people laugh. I want to make people smile and, take something away from whatever I try to put out in the world. Whether or not you were like, wow, that's really something. Like, you can say that in like a sense of like, wow, like, okay, she's doing that. Or like an example would be, just like the mixes I do, like you're just trying to put an element of yourself and trying to be as memorable and trying to, and like I said, each performance I try to do, I'm so proud of when I'm making the mix. I'm like laughing in my living room alone, or putting this little sideshow together, and I'm like crying on an airplane putting it together. So it's just like, I take great passion in what I do, and then obviously I do that in healthcare too. But like, this is something that I'm like, wow, like people are gonna remember this. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, just like, I remember, I think it was the Indulge show Elle did, somewhere over the rainbow, and I like started like crying just because I was like, this means so much, like, and like, mind you, probably two or three other people in here crying, but like, this is, you could tell the blood, sweat, and tears that we put into this, or, the message we're trying to bring across. It's not just to be, as Elle would put it, loud. Like, that's, and she would often tell me, like, people are gonna say things like, they're gonna tell you you're loud, you're obnoxious, or, you're a troublemaker. Like, let them. As long as you know in your heart what you're doing is right or for the good of what you love, there is no wrong. Like, and yeah, I'm gonna be loud with what I do. I remember, like, it was like my second show. I made a sound mix talking about land back, and people were like uncomfortable, and I'm like, you know what? Let them be uncomfortable. I want them to reflect on, why are you uncomfortable? Why are you uncomfortable with land back? And then like, initially I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, no, that's literally not what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna allow other people to dictate what I want to showcase or what I want to put out there. Yeah, I'll look at things and kind of like, who am I excluding, or who am I making invisible because of this? If there is, I'm not going, like, I'm going to curtail it to a point. I don't want to make anyone invisible. I don't want anyone to feel silenced. I don't want anyone to feel like excluded at all, because, been through that my whole life, and it's not a nice feeling. So why should I be a hypocrite and do that to another person? So like, listening to Elle, like, I love her so much. Just like, anytime, every opportunity I have just to hear a story she say, or a drag tip, like, sometimes she's like my lifesaver because I'll forget something. But like, we're here for each other, and that's something that I really love uniquely about this community, is we're all here for each other. I should say that in the sense of like, most of us are here for each other, and just because we know what would it's like to start off as an outsider, and certainly I was in that position 11 months ago, and now I feel very, I don't know how you say, like, I feel like I'm from Jabuktuk. I feel like I am like an element of Jabuktuk. Like, so it's just something that, there is community here, and knowing that, anyone could reach out to me too, and say, hey, Anita or Tanas, like, I'm interested in starting this, or like, what are your thoughts on this? I'm like, yeah, I'm all ears. I'm here. Yeah, so I am a Onu, like Mi'kmaq nurse practitioner. So I am a nurse practitioner currently based in Millbrook First Nation. I've been a nurse for I'll be like approaching almost 9 years. It actually just hit 8, and so I'm like 15, 16 months into it. So, or of a year. So yeah, 8 years into nursing. And so, like, I have a master's degree at Dalhousie in nursing and a bachelor's degree in science of nursing from Cape Breton. And yeah, so I've been a nurse practitioner for the last 3 years, primarily in Mi'kmaq communities. I worked in my home community of Eskasoni for a year, and I've been in Millbrook for the last 2. And yeah, so a part of what I do is trying to make healthcare more accessible for my people, whether or not it's providing care in our language or just trying to navigate through a racist system that's not built for us, for our communities. And also, like, I've been kind of like teaching at universities, trying to kind of dismantle what we know of how to care for us, because they've been doing it wrong for a long time, and it's about time that we're trying to change that learning, to allow future healthcare providers to better care for us. For the longest time, there has been this finger pointing on whose responsibility to make change is, um, like whether or not it's government, whether or not it's community, whether or not it's province, like, oh, that's their problem. Actually, that's their problem. And it's like this big circle that you keep going around and you're not getting anywhere with. And our communities, we've had enough, because, like, for the last 500 years, like, we've experienced shit, literal shit, in terms of access to healthcare, um, poor health outcomes in our communities, rates of suicide in our communities. And for many years, like, when you're in university, this is what you're being fed as a university student, that we're very deficit based, that we lack in this, we lack in this, or our rates of diabetes are here. And they never talk about, like, despite everything, we still have our language. Despite everything, we still practice our culture. Despite everything, we're still here. You don't highlight that. So now, like, because we eventually put our foot down and said, no, like, we're going to say our story. We're going to share how we want to be treated. And, we have the answers in our communities, and we're going to, solve things ourselves. And so the last like 15 to 20 years, like, we've had this like uprising of like, or increasing recruitment and retention of Indigenous nurses, Indigenous doctors, Indigenous paramedics, and obviously that's not just the solution. There's like lawyers and so forth, and we're putting our health and our sovereignty, or our justices, or the lay of the land, and how we kind of say what happens to our land, into our own hands. And I feel that as of now, we have been flourishing because it's back in our hands. Because pre-contact, whose hands was it in before? Our own. Like, we've had doctors for thousands and thousands of years. We've had nurses for thousands of years, pharmacists. We just had different names for them. And like, they didn't need degrees, like, 500 years ago to cure, like, cold or pneumonia, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, like, I think just putting things back in our hands, and letting us write the rules for a change has been a big change in our communities. Second year of nursing, going through all these stats, I'm like, okay, on the next slide, you're going to talk about why the rates of suicide or what we're doing about it. And then it goes on to a different subject about how to care for another population. And I'm like, you skipped the slide because, like, when are we going to talk about the why? Like, I thought that's why we're in healthcare, to make that difference. We're making differences for other people, but we're not making differences for us. Like, that makes no sense to me. And so, like, day one from nursing, I've always made it a point to share us, like whether or not it's how to care for Mi'kmaq patients, or simple words you can use in care, or tools that you can use in practice. Um, like, these are things that they're not big asks. Um, yeah, and it's certainly like, why? Why isn't this something that we've done 50 years ago? Or why is it that we continue to, praise and uplift like founders of nursing that, when you actually look at them now, that they're pretty problematic when it comes to what their views were on Indigenous people. And it just kind of goes to show, like, well, we've had nurses for thousands of years. Like, why don't you hold us to that standard too, or hold us to that pedestal too? I think the way we've been going around things has been, helpful. Like, I know there's some places that are like, well, let's hang some Indigenous art. I'm like, yeah, that does certainly, it is an element that would make me feel a little bit seen, but it doesn't change the attitudes that exist in your institution, or the ideologies that exist on how you view us, or how you see us, or preconceived notions that exist in curricula, or the pedagogies that exist. Um, I think taking a step in terms of, we all have this responsibility to have this unlearning, because, like, you can't just say one day, oh, I'm anti-racist, oh, I'm I'm culturally competent or culturally safe. No, like, this is a journey that is lifelong. Like, this is something that, even I as a person have to wake up every day, what can I learn a little bit today? Or what can I do to contribute to a better society today? And it's not hanging a painting in my office. Like, that is part of, that is helpful, but, like, that's not going to change how that individual is going to see me. I think we really need to kind of, like I said, that unlearning, like, whether or not we try to let go of the biases that we were raised around, or witnessed throughout our lives, and just kind of try to let go of it. Whether or not, but also, like, the institution itself has that responsibility to provide that unlearning, because otherwise, like, we wouldn't have these, like, racist stereotypes of alcoholism amongst, like, Indigenous communities, or or how education is paid for Indigenous communities, or like, just examples of those that could exist, that, that perception can harm that individual or that community in accessing healthcare, accessing education, accessing social justice. So I think, like, I shouldn't say I think, like, I know we all have a role in it. Um, it does involve, like, use of language. It does involve collaboration with communities. It does involve, and not just Indigenous communities. We're all here. We're all sharing this land. We're all occupying this space. We all need to put our perspectives on the table and use them together to kind of benefit everyone. And, like, that is, like, the principle of two-eyed seeing. Like, my uncle Albert Marshall, he would often say, we put our perspectives on the table to scrutinize, not scrutinize in the sense that you're, like, in a negativity sense, but you're dissecting it, you're trying to paint a better picture for everyone. And how I explain it to others, like if you were to imagine yourself in a dark room and there was, say, a circle of chairs all facing each other, and in the middle of the room, there's an object. And so a group of people all fill these chairs. The room's still dark, and then someone's asked, "Tell me what's in front of you." Not a single person in that room's going to know what's in front of you. So by each individual turning on their perspective like a flashlight on that object. So say I turn my flashlight on and that's my worldview I'm showing. I can somewhat make out what's in front of me, but I can only kind of make a guess. As more and more people's perspectives turn on, eventually, that concern or that issue or solution that was right in front of us this whole time, eventually, with everyone's perspectives, you're like, okay, that's the solution. That's how we're all gonna, survive at the end of the day, or go home and feel good what we've accomplished. Yeah, so that's the best way I can explain in terms of like, about the Marudik is in Mi'kmaq helping each other, working together. And at the end of it, like, you're trying to benefit everyone. Yeah, like I think the last 2 years here, like just really speaks for itself. Just like when I was here as a university student, I felt so disconnected. I felt so alone. I felt very isolated and just not, I didn't feel like I was home. I felt like I was off in another country, but I was only 4 hours away from home. It doesn't feel like that now. Like, I feel because of queer people, because of spaces that, you're able to be yourself and see yourself. And not only that, see other people and them seeing you has really profoundly changed my outlook on where my place is in Jabuktuk. And not necessarily just drag, like whether or not it's me working at the IWK, the Children's Hospital here, like I feel seen, I feel valued, and I feel like loved in whatever I do or decide to venture into that day, or have a speaking engagement, or just even sitting down for coffee. Like, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel valued. And that's an experience every human should feel, regardless of where they come from, what language they speak, the color of their skin. Everyone should feel like that, and nobody should ever be able to take that away from an individual. And I think we collectively all have the duty to preserve that feeling seen, feeling loved, feeling safe, in every space, whether or not you call people out for their harmful views, or whether or not letting someone know you're there for them, or you're gonna wait till their friend comes to pick them up, or we're all here together and we're all here to you know enjoy life day by day. Yeah, I would probably say ma yapchu gisasig bidonas sabonog aham ma yapchu medueg olasido nagoe. And when I say that, it's not always going to be hard. There will be a tomorrow, and you won't always be lost. One day you will find yourself, and things will work out. My grandfather used to always